Amid the ongoing GDP debate, after former economic advisor Arvind Subramanian made a remark that India's GDP is being overestimated by 2.5%. And after that, their comments are pouring in. To get clarity on the issues of the GDP and economy, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Bibek Debroy, who is the chairman of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. So welcome, sir, for joining us. So coming on to the point, my first question would be, Arvind Subramanian's recent projection that India's GDP has been overestimated by 2.5%, and many economists are saying that it has been lower than that. So what's your quick remark on the Arvind's analysis of GDP growth?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the other economists because you have not mentioned which other economists one is talking about. I'm only going to comment on the Arvind Subramanian paper. The Arvind Subramanian paper, had Arvind Subramanian been any economist, any arbitrary economist, would have been ignored, trashed. Had he been a PhD student, his supervisor would have said, go revise it, because it has several serious methodological issues. I will get into the details if you are interested in the details. The methodology is extremely suspect, and therefore it is an attempt to sensationalize, and the only reason it is getting attention is because Dr. Arvind Subramanian happens to be a former chief economic advisor, and as a former chief economic advisor he should have had better sense.
So you said that if we want to go deep into the methodology, if you can brief us about what are the flaws with this methodological adaptation in that research paper, can you brief us with that?
Yes, but before that I should say that as an economic advisory council, we have issued a paper which is a point by point rebuttal. Essentially, Arvind Subramanian does two things. The first thing is a set of correlations correlating a certain number of indicators with India's real GDP. The second thing he does is a regression exercise in which he uses a certain number of variables to try and do a cross country regression to try and see whether GDP is adequately explained by these variables. And in the process, if a country does not conform to that trend, he says that there must be something wrong with the GDP figures. This is a very strange way of estimating GDP. No economist ever in the world has attempted something like this. Dr. Sujit Bhalla, who is a respected statistician and economist, has done an exercise with 89 countries using exactly the same methodology as Dr. Arvind Subramanian's, and he finds that 27 other countries perform worse than India. So if India has concocted GDP, these 27 countries have also concocted GDP even more than India, and in that list of countries you will also find Germany, you will also find Belgium, you will also find Britain. That's the reason I said the methodology is a very, very strange and bizarre kind of methodology.
Okay, so you're talking about methodology. We can sure say that Subramanian's methodology can certainly be questioned and his estimates of GDP may be wrong. But he has merely made this thing explicit, that the great Indian puzzle that is existing with the GDP numbers. Someone is projecting something else, someone is refuting it, and someone is coming up with different projections. Some economists are saying it's lower than that. Then how will you draw a complete picture of this puzzle?
I don't think there is any puzzle. A puzzle, there is a fact of the growth rate slowing down. Now that's a separate issue which we can talk about. We should not be muddying the waters by questioning the authenticity of the GDP numbers. So let's take this second one first. We can come to the growth slowdown later on. So far as the GDP transition is concerned, the transition to the new method of estimating GDP may have been done in January 2015, but the process of switching to this new system of national accounts began in the year 2008. And when it was done in 2008, this transition was vetted by a very large number of national income experts in India, beginning with the UPA government. The NDA government, the first NDA government, the first Narendra Modi government merely implemented what was already in the works. In the process, many countries in the world recalibrated their GDP, and in a country like the US, in the year 2013, because of these changes, because of the way they began to evaluate intellectual property and the contribution of Hollywood, the old GDP series was dragged back to the year 1929. So, it was corrected up to the year 1929. So, these changes happen everywhere in the world, but in no country other than India do you have a situation where every person is an expert on GDP, and because the series has been revised, thinks that there is something wrong with the data.